IDLES Crawler album review. Let's chat about it. Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning here tonight to chat about this latest from IDLES. This is a Bristol, UK-based punk rock band who very quickly, but not so quietly, have become one of the bigger bands in modern punk. And it's not really that hard to see why either. I mean, these guys had an awesome sound right from the get-go on their debut album, Brutalism. I mean, it was obvious right off the bat that these guys were not holding back anything at all. They were not holding back any punches. This was a raw, explosive, thinking man's punk album that just sounded like a tea kettle that had been left on the stove way too long. And if they didn't do that enough with their debut, with their follow-up album, Joy as an Act of Resistance, they cemented themselves as one of modern punk's finest acts. Not only was this the best punk album of 2018, it was one of the best albums of 2018. I mean, come on, Never Trust a Man with a Perm, Great, and Danny Nedelko were easily some of the band's and the year's best tracks. Now, last year they put out Ultra Mono. And I don't know what it is, but for the first time, I was not on the same page as IDLES. Even last week, when I did a re-listen of Ultra Mono for listening to this album, I just was not into it, man. I'm not into it. Lyrically, it still packs a punch, but the energy and the production on this album just was not my cup of tea. There were great tracks for sure, but something seemed off to me. Now, leading up to this new album, I didn't really know what to make of these new singles, but I did listen to the album, and it's actually pretty good. This album starts off with MTT 420RR, and it's not the most explosive or raw start. But spoiler alert, this is a different album from IDLES this time around. You know, I haven't heard singer Joe Talbot this somber and emotional in quite some time. But listen, go into this track with an open mind. It's a much more of a electronically tinged instrumental, which is something new for them. But truthfully, I think it's a really good risk and a welcome change. This is a different side of IDLES, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Wheel, on the other hand, is business as usual. I love how clunky this bass riff is, and there's just an intensity to this track that I cannot say no to. And I love this super hypnotic chorus of "Can I Get a Hallelujah?" And yeah, you know what? It's maybe not as off the rails as their first two albums, but this is a beefy punk jam on a mission. On the other hand, When the Lights Come On is easily one of my favorite tracks here. It is so gloomy. It is so post-punk influenced, which is something I haven't been able to say in quite some time. It's really great overall. It's also very personal once again. Spoiler alert, a lot of this album it's very dreamy as well. But all that alongside this very hypnotizing bass riff is great. Stockholm Syndrome, one of the best deep cuts here. I love this dirty riff and just how grimy this track is as a whole. Like, it is absolutely filthy. This sounds like something off of Brutalism. It also offers some really introspective lyrics, which I always love as well. And the Beachland Ballroom, I personally enjoy a lot, but it's a track that you really need to sit with. And if you're not into this from IDLES, yeah, I get it. But it's actually a really captivating, emotional art punk tune. And I love Joe Talbot's performance on this track. It is so filled with swagger. Like I've been saying, this is a very different album from IDLES, but go into it with an open mind. You might find something here that you actually really enjoy. Like, take for example, Crawl. This is one of the most thunderous, anthemic tracks here. But it's also just so instantaneous. It is just abrasive ear candy. You will love this right from the word go. And it reminds me of what I enjoyed about IDLES in the first place. There are, however, still some big red flags and some reasons why I still just can't completely connect with IDLES these days. Like, take for example Car Crash. This is one of the most pensive, calculating tracks here, which is something that sounds really great on paper, but I can't connect with this. I mean, I do like the very noisy riff a lot, but everything else about this track is everything I kind of didn't like about Ultra Mono. Like, it is amazing what just a little bit of energy does for me. And I feel like on paper, I should enjoy the new sensation a whole lot more. It's a lot more crunchy and upbeat than most of this album. I don't know, though. This just, on paper, is not my favorite lyrics. It's not my favorite performance from Joe Talbot. This track overall seems a little flimsy. Even production-wise, this isn't up to snuff. And the second half of this album just seems to go back and forth between experiments that actually work pretty well and some really bizarre choices. Like Meds is so middle of the road. And between the intense visual lyrics and this really slick bass riff, there's actually a lot to like on this track. But then we get to the guitar playing, which is some of the most obnoxious here. Like it's not bad, but there's some really odd choices on this track. And speaking of weird, the Kalechi instrumental is even weirder. Like it's a fine instrumental interlude, but just it does not have any right whatsoever showing up on this album. And Progress is even more bizarre, and I think it's the worst track here. Look, this album was on a serious roll of getting me back, really getting in the groove of loving an IDLES album. But this track rolls along, and I don't see what they're getting at anymore, very quickly too. Writing-wise, some of the earlier tracks, even though I wasn't that into them, I at least, found some solace in just loving some of the lyrics, the deeply personal lyrics of this album. But this is just not it. I mean, yeah, this track picks up a little bit, and it's a little bit more captivating, but I don't know. Overall, this is just not for me. Then we have Wizz, which is genuinely one of the best tracks here. And all it is a 30-second raucous punk rock track, but man, let me tell you, it's really memorable. King Snake, though, easily one of the best deep cuts on this album, and lyrically might be my favorite track here. Just love how visual this is. Combine that with a really intense instrumental, and once again, a phenomenal swagger-filled performance by Joe Talbot, and you are dealing with a great deep cut. If you're looking for a genuine anthem on this album, look no further. And the end, as a finale, one of the most intense tracks here all around. Like, this album is very strange. I feel like there's like a perfectly fine, decent 8 of an album buried somewhere in some of these weirder late album experiments. And this track is frustrating because this is a sound that I wanted to hear a lot more of on this album. Between just the sense of finality to it and the tongue-in-cheek lyrics and the explosive nature of it, this may be the best track here. It's a tough album because there's a lot going on here that's really good. There's a lot of this album that gets me back in IDLES' good graces and reminds me of what I loved about them to begin with. But some of the experiments on this album are genuinely really puzzling. And when this album gets bad, it gets bad really fast. So much so that when they branch out and it becomes a little misguided, things get downright ugly. But still, I think overall, this is a project that's, swaying me into, IDLES' good graces again. I wasn't into Ultramono, but this gets me back on track of, enjoying IDLES music again. That's all I really needed right now. Feeling a decent 7 on this album, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.